we're going to do one more improvement to our S-list before we pivot and go do something else entirely. So let's discuss one obvious limitation of int lists, which is that, yes, integers. We could only create S-lists that contain integers. Over here we can see that our normal usage is create an S-list and we can add things to it. But if we wanted to say make a list of strings, it doesn't work. And that's annoying, right? We don't want to make a separate S-list class for strings and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify S-list so it can accept any generic type, okay? So Java has a certain syntax for doing this that's a bit intricate, but I'm just going to show you the basics today. And in a later lecture in a little while, we'll understand all of the real details. Okay, so I'll just say represents a list of stuff, okay? Where all the list work is allocated to a naked recursive data structure, okay? So just so the comment is accurate. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new funny symbol here, where I'm going to put in two little angle brackets, and I'm just going to make up anything I want, anything at all. So I'm going to go with, I don't know, blorp, okay? Doesn't matter what it is, your choice. Though it's nice to pick something less silly, but I'll do that just so you're convinced I could do anything. Then what I'm going to do is just go through my code, and anywhere I have int, okay, I'm going to replace it with blorp. As long as it, well, I don't want to make this, size should still be an int, but these other ints should be blorp. Okay, so items should be blorps. Whenever you create one, give it a blorp. This, well, we're going to rename int node actually, and call it, I don't know, let's say just node. Okay, I already did that earlier. Okay, so all int nodes are nodes, and now we just need to make sure we have blorps everywhere. Okay. So 982734, whenever we call this constructor for nodes, we're expecting a blorp. Okay, we'll pick null as our default value. That's our sentinel value, the one we didn't really care about. Okay, so scrolling through further, again, when slist is given an argument, this should be a blorp, and here we should put null, and here we still have x. Okay. Insert front, blorp. Public int get front, still a blorp. Okay, inserting back, we want to insert blorps. Okay, what else? That looks good. Okay, get back should be a blorp. And finally, we don't need this main. We're going to use this launcher over here. Okay, let's just double check that it compiles. Okay, it compiles. Good. Okay, and just can't run because there's no main. All right, so now here's slist launcher. Okay, so this class is done. It now does anything. It can handle any type. But over here, if we try running it, it will yell at us in some way or other. Okay? So when I run this thing, it says, oh, well, there's a typo. Okay, I try running this thing, and while it compiles, it says it uses unchecked or unsafe operations. Okay? So I'm not going to explain exactly what that means today, but I am going to tell you how to make that warning go away. So actually the code right now as it exists will work, but we don't get all of the compile time checks we want. Okay? So whenever you're using a generic class, right, which is a class where you have added this to the top and use it all throughout, then over here when you declare one of these, you should say what type it is. And whenever you instantiate, you should do the same. Okay? So what that does, it gives the compiler a chance to double check everything. So this is our declaration, so the compiler can look through and say, okay, yeah, everything you're putting in is good. Without that, it doesn't know enough. The compiler just throws its hands up and says, I don't know exactly what kind of list, so I'm going to hope everything's cool. All right. So here, then everything compiles fine, and I don't know, you can ask for things like s2.get back. We should get back ape, because this was inserted at the front. Okay, so that's generics in a nutshell. So let's just look at the syntax, right? So of course our old S-lists had the issue that we could not create string-based, we couldn't add strings to them, and if we had tried, which I didn't, but if we tried, we would have gotten an error. So instead what we did, okay, if you just look at the difference, it's actually very small, right? I just took anywhere, I had int, and I turned them into bleep blorps, okay? And in this case, I used blorp before I decided bleep blorp. And again, doesn't matter what this is called as long as it's used consistently and it's in these angle brackets here. And then what that does for us basically is we could defer type selection until declaration. Okay. So we'll spend a lot of time thinking about the ins and outs of this. Like, what does it mean exactly? How can you possibly declare one of these without specifying the type? Why is the compiler not yelling at you then? That'll be later. For now, I just want to teach you how to use it, and we'll get into the language details later. So here are the rule of thumbs you'll need for project 1. In the Java file where you actually create your data structure, this one right here, you should specify generic type only once at the very top of the file. And if you do that, you can't go wrong. You don't want to put it here and here and here, all these other places. This is just the simplest way of doing it. Okay? In Java files that use your data structure, like this one, you should specify your desired type twice. Once when you declare the variable, and once whenever you instantiate. Now the keen observer will note that I put capital integer in our example before, right? Instead of lowercase. Okay? So it's a technical detail, again, that we'll get to in a few weeks, but when you're declaring or instantiating such a data structure, you should use the reference type. So for example, if you're doing int, you should use capital I integer, double, uppercase double, car, uppercase character, and so forth, okay? So that's the rough picture, and you don't need to, whenever you're using your SS later, like you don't need to declare all these variables. Let's say you have variable x that you want to put into your list. Just make it a double like usual. Lowercase double over here. The only time you have to use these special capitalized things that we'll learn about later is whenever you declare and instantiate. Okay? So that's our version of generics, and we'll get the full scoop later.